our guest speaker, and he's going to talk a little bit about, well, I'll let him tell you what he's going to talk about.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Lay down my tools here a moment. They belong to Richard over here. Well, we're very fortunate this evening to have Richard with us. Met him for dinner earlier, and he was 10 minutes late. And I'm thinking, hey, man, what's going on? You know, let's be a little bit more precise than this. So then I was thinking he lived in Newport Richey, and he was, like I say, 10 minutes late. When he gets there, I find out he drove down from Gainesville.
Oh, my God.
So we appreciate that effort, buddy. Sarah did the announcement on the background, and the thing that actually he did for me was help me to connect with Louis Tassar in Tallahassee. That's after collecting the artifacts. My wife and I collected in here something in the neighborhood between 3,500 and 4,000 artifacts. And we took them finally, with his help and direction, to Louis Tassar up in Gainesville, who did a complete evaluation documentation on all the material we took up there. And it was through him that we found out that we did have a really significant prehistoric site because of the number of Paleo-Indian artifacts that were found dating back as much as 12,000 years. So what we have here are cultural residents beginning with the first in this country and graduating up to who we are today. So Heritage Pines has always had a lot of good people in here. Rich is a renowned archaeologist currently holding a position at the University of South Florida, as she mentioned. And he's the director of Florida Public Archaeological Network, and he's headquartered up in Crystal River. And for you people who are not acquainted with the archaeological sites within our area, this is a very prominent site up there that's been worked on for how many years now, Rich?
Since 1903.
1903. So, and if you have grandchildren, children in, and you want to give them a little educational trip, it's an excellent place to visit. My wife and I were just up there about 3 weeks ago, and we were amazed. It's the third time we've been there, but it's really, really something to see. Rich has a wealth of information, and his extensive background can be found if you'd like to find out a little bit more about Rich. Hey, go on the internet. He's got a very, very extensive background in archaeology. For you people who may be from the Northeast, Richard did spend, I think he got his bachelor's degree at State University of New York at Stony Brook. And he is about to get his doctorate PhD down here at the, what is that called? I don't like that because they play West Virginia in football, and I'm afraid they're going to beat them. The University of South Florida. So we, again, say we're very fortunate to have him come and share some things with us this evening. And he's going to be with us when we go to the clubhouse just a little bit later for some cake and coffee. So there may be questions that I know you had a question you directed my attention here a moment ago. But he has the professional answer. So, Rich, I'd like you to talk to these people and tell them a little bit about your archaeology work in the state of Florida.
Thank you very much for inviting me down. I want to thank both Herb and Paul for inviting me down and allowing me to be part of this, and also for inviting us to dinner. My wife, Debbie, came down with me. Again, I had to drag her down. Again, my name is Rich Estabrook, and I direct the Florida Public Archaeology Network Center at Crystal River. I've been doing archaeology in Florida for about 30 years. It's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. It's a good time. But enough about me. What's really, really important here are two things tonight. Two very special things. This archaeological site and these special people that made this happen. Let me talk a little bit about this site and how important this site is. This is a prehistoric archaeological site made mostly of stone tools, the things that the prehistoric peoples that lived here left behind. The soils in Florida are so acidic and so detrimental to organic material that the only thing that preserves are these stone tools. We estimate that there are about 50,000 archaeological sites in Florida, so my job is secure. We've recorded about 35,000 of those sites so far in the state that we have on a thing called the Florida Master Site File. There are 5 sites, on one hand I can count 5 sites that are as important or as significant as the sites you have here. So this is a very, very important site to the prehistory of Florida. It's important for a number of special reasons. As Herb alluded to earlier, it's one of the earliest sites, one of the time period when the earliest peoples that came to Florida lived here. Was Florida like this when they came? Unfortunately, it wasn't. A lot different then. Actually, the Gulf of Mexico was 100 miles out that way. So this was inland. This was central part of the state of Florida. The vegetation was different. The animals were different. Lots and lots of things were different. But one thing was the same. This sinkhole was one of the few sources of water that those early people had. And they came here for the water. What else brings water? Animals, plants, things that grow around. This was a little oasis, much like it is today. It's set aside as an oasis. 12,000 years ago, this was an oasis for the Paleo-Indian peoples that came here. They came here, they found food, they found water, they found resources. All of the things that they needed to sustain themselves were found around this little sinkhole. Some of the sinkholes to the south of us actually have preserved some of the best preserved artifacts we have in Florida. And I brought an example of something just to kind of show you briefly. Who knows what this is? Atlatls. Good deal. She gets a prize. An atlatl. This actually is a replica of the atlatl that was found at Warm Mineral Springs, which is a sinkhole that's very similar to this site down in Sarasota County. So what I've brought is, and I can show this a little bit later, it's a replica of the artifacts that were actually used by the peoples that were inhabiting this area 12,000 years ago. Why did they bring so many stone tools here? Why did they stay here? This is one of the few sources of permanent sources of water in this area. 12,000 years ago, this was very much drier, a lot less rainfall, very different vegetation, very different kinds of animals. Who's ever seen a mastodon or a mammoth? You will if you go to the Gainesville Museum, but you won't anymore. These were the animals that roamed this area. These were the things these people hunted, and they used this equipment to do it. It's a very different place. But this is where they would have come to spend their time, to set up camp, to make stone tools, to refit their tools. They lived their lives. They came here to contemplate as well. They probably came here for a lot of reasons, but mostly for the resources it contained. It's a very important site. We'll talk a little bit more about that actually a little bit later. If anybody's interested in the particulars about it, my specialty is stone tools, and we can talk for hours about those. What I really want to do is, sites are important, and it's good that they're being recovered. It's very good that they're being preserved and protected. Unfortunately, many of the sites like this have been the spots where a Walmart goes, or a 7-Eleven goes, or something else goes. And although we need those things, they're important to have, every time one of those gets put in, another site like this gets destroyed. It's one more piece of history that kind of gets taken away from us. One more sense of place gets taken away from your grandchildren. Because once these sites are gone, they can't be replaced. You can't rebuild them. You can't find another one. There's only so many of them that preserve that 12,000 years. This site was fortunate to have someone with the insight of Herb and Paula that were able to recognize the importance and significance of this resource. I've got an admission to make. A very good friend of mine was an archaeologist that did the initial survey for this area, and I know her very well. She actually helped train me. She looked at this site and looked at the materials that were found and said, it really isn't that important a site. It's just a lithic site. And I'll get with her about that later on. But Herb was able to look at those stone tools, and from the knowledge that he brought with him, from the knowledge he's had, since he's a little kid, he's been collecting these artifacts, looking at them, analyzing them, studying them. I mean, I have the degrees, but this man has the knowledge. And Paul has the patience to put up with them. This is what it took to recognize this site as being important. A professional archaeologist looked at it and made a snap decision. She's made hundreds of these decisions. This time she was wrong, but Herbert was right. They were able to recognize this site for what it was, for the importance of what it contained, for the artifacts that it had in it, and he was able to get in touch with the people that made a difference. Louis Tesser, Ryan Wheeler, the state archaeologist, and myself, who were able to come out and assist him to identify and protect these things. A quick story, Ryan Wheeler is the state archaeologist, or was up until recently. He's recently moved on. His wife got a job somewhere else. The story is that he was in tears when he saw the artifacts from the site. He was actually that moved that this site had been protected and preserved, as opposed to being paved over, or the artifacts taken and sold, or the materials just being lost completely to history. Because, like I say, once they're lost, they're gone forever. Now we have the artifacts are on file with the state in Tallahassee, so we have a record of where they are. Those materials are available on loan to come back down to the community if they want to have those back again. They're not, it's not like Indiana Jones where you put them in a box and we store them away somewhere. I know exactly where they were. I just visited them recently. So there's lots of opportunity here to learn from this resource. School children, Boy Scouts, people in the community. There's all kinds of folks that come to this area that really don't have the opportunity to have seen the things that y'all have been able to see, or her's been able to see, Paul's been able to see. We can bring those things now to those people that otherwise would never had a chance to view those objects, to view those artifacts, and to understand that part of history. So it's a connection over 12,000 years that's possible.